She once stood beneath bright Broadway lights, her voice echoing through a theater filled with applause. As a child, she played young Nala in The Lion King, a role millions dream of but few ever touch. Years later, there were no spotlights. No curtain call. Just a quiet home in New Jersey, and a danger no one could see from the outside. On a winter night, Imani Dia Smith was attacked inside her own home, stabbed multiple times, her life ending where she should have been safest. A young son was left without his mother. A family was left searching for answers. This was not a random act. It was not sudden. It was the final moment of a story built slowly, silently, behind closed doors. Tonight, we're telling that story, who Imani was, what she endured, and how a life full of promise ended in tragedy. Imani Dia Smith was never meant to be remembered for how she died. For most of her life, she was known for how brightly she lived. As a child, she performed on Broadway, carrying a role that symbolized courage, loyalty, and love. But long after the stage lights dimmed, Imani was building a quieter life, one centered on motherhood, stability, and survival. That life was cut short in a way that forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. Violence doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes, it grows slowly, invisibly, until it's too late. From the outside, Imani's life looked ordinary. She was a young woman, a mother, someone navigating adulthood after early success. But ordinary does not mean safe. And familiar does not mean harmless. Imani grew up surrounded by family who saw her creativity early. She wasn't just talented, she was warm, expressive, and deeply empathetic. Those close to her described her as someone who felt things intensely. She cared hard, loved deeply, and when she became a mother, that capacity for love intensified. Her son became the center of her world. Every decision, every compromise, every sacrifice revolved around keeping him safe. Life after Broadway wasn't glamorous. Like many former child performers, Imani had to redefine herself. Fame didn't follow her into adulthood in the way people assume it does. There were bills, responsibilities, and the quiet pressure of expectations that no longer fit who she was becoming. But she was resilient. She worked. She parented. She kept going. And then there was the relationship. At first, nothing seemed alarming. This is how so many of these stories begin. There was no immediate violence. No public scenes. No obvious danger. Relationships like this don't announce themselves as threats. They start with attention, with closeness, with intensity that can feel like love. Over time, subtle changes appeared. Friends noticed she became quieter, less available, more guarded. Communication slowed. These shifts are easy to dismiss. People are busy. Parenthood is demanding. Life is stressful. But in hindsight, these are often the earliest warning signs, moments when someone begins to shrink themselves to keep the peace. Inside the relationship, tension grew. Arguments became more frequent. The emotional atmosphere changed. Comfort turned into unpredictability. Safety turned into vigilance. For many victims, this is the stage where survival becomes strategy. You learn how to avoid certain topics, how to manage moods, how to de-escalate. Not because you believe it's right, but because you're trying to get through the day without things getting worse. Leaving isn't simple, especially when a child is involved. Leaving can mean instability, fear of retaliation, fear of being found, fear of losing everything you've built. Many victims don't stay because they want to. They stay because they're trying to survive long enough to find a safe exit. In the days leading up to Imani's death, there were signs that something was changing. She was still a mother first. Still making plans. Still trying to move forward. But behind the scenes, danger was closing in. On the night of the attack, Imani was inside her home in Edison, New Jersey. This wasn't a random intrusion. This wasn't a stranger. It was someone she knew. Someone who had access. Someone who should never have been a threat. Police believe she was stabbed multiple times. The violence was personal, immediate, overwhelming. Emergency responders were called. She was rushed to the hospital. But the injuries were too severe. Imani was pronounced dead shortly after arrival. She was 25 years old. Her young son was left without his mother. A child who would grow up with questions no child should have to ask. A family was left with grief that doesn't have an endpoint. Investigators quickly determined this was not a random act. Her boyfriend was arrested and charged with murder, along with additional charges related to weapons and child endangerment. Prosecutors stated clearly, this was targeted. This was intentional. In the aftermath, the community mourned. Vigils were held. Tributes poured in. Media coverage focused heavily on her Broadway past, often reducing her to a single line, former child star. But Imani was more than that. She was a mother, a daughter, a woman trying to live quietly and safely. Her case fits a pattern that repeats far too often. Intimate partner violence rarely begins with murder. It begins with control, with isolation, with fear, with silence. And when systems fail to intervene early, the consequences are devastating. Statistics tell us that the most dangerous time for a victim is when they try to leave, or when an abuser feels they're losing control. These are not accidents. They are predictable escalations. Imani's death raises hard questions about how we recognize danger, about how we support victims before it's too late, about how many warning signs are dismissed because they don't look dramatic enough. Her family now faces a lifetime of loss. Her son will grow up with stories instead of memories. And the court process will move forward, but no sentence can undo what was taken. Remembering Imani means refusing to let her story be consumed as entertainment alone. It means understanding the patterns. It means listening when people grow quieter instead of louder. It means taking control, fear, and isolation seriously, before they turn fatal. She deserved to live. She deserved safety. And her story matters not because of how it ended, but because of what it reveals. If this story moved you, don't let it end here. Subscribe to the channel so these stories continue to be told with truth and care. Share this video, because awareness saves lives. And if you or someone you know is in a dangerous relationship, please reach out for help. Silence protects abusers, not victims. Imani Dia Smith should still be here. And the least we can do is make sure her story is heard.